We are live.
Well, folks, it's been a heck of a year on defense trying to stop the Biden, Pelosi, Schumer gun control agenda. And we're so happy to give you guys some major breaking news that the fight for gun rights in D.C. is finally going where it should have been going for a long time. It's going on offense. You're about to hear a really awesome update on Congressman Matt Gaetz, pro-gun Congressman Gaetz from Florida, just filed a national stand your ground law bill that would change the entire dynamic right now on all of these woke prosecutors who are trying to put gun owners like you and me in prison. It's going to be an awesome update for you guys. Aaron Dorr here with the American Firearms Association. We've got our whole team here for today's broadcast. We've got Chris Dorr. We've got Ben Dorr. And for those who are asking, we staged intervention and we brought our good friend Patrick Parsons out of the swamp where he's been for the last year as Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's chief of staff, and he is back in the fight for gun rights, and we're happy to have him here today. But guys, we're just going to get this video going here right now. But as you see right now, we're posting content in the comment section right now, and we have one thing here to ask you for today. Whatever else you do, hit the link to tell your congressman to co-sponsor Stand Your Ground Law.
Yeah, this is Stand Your Ground, guys. This has been a huge pro-gun piece of legislation that we have worked on personally in states all across America. Aaron with Iowa Gun Owners, all of us here, we passed Stand Your Ground law in Iowa. We passed it in Missouri. We've passed it all over the place. Wyoming. Yeah, if there's more that I forgot, there's been so many, it's hard to remember. Broke the dam after the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin shooting down in Florida back in 2012. The only states that I know of in America that have passed the Stand Your Ground law are states that the American Firearms Association and the state affiliates that you're watching right now have passed this bill in. Well, now we're going federal. We're going federal here with H.R. 6248. This is Congressman Matt Gaetz, really a fantastic Stand Your Ground bill. We need this at the federal level, especially with Biden's goons controlling the DOJ, controlling all the levers of power in government. We needed a bill like this a long time ago, but Matt Gaetz is bringing it forward right now. And we're going to talk about what the bill does, what the bill has done in all the other states where we've passed this legislation in the past, and why this is so important going forward.
And before Patrick jumps in, I just wanted, for those of you who don't know who Matt Gaetz is, maybe you've seen him on Fox News before, but that's him right there on the left side of your screen. He's a congressman from Florida, very vocal attacker right now when it comes to weak, moderate Republicans. He's been doing a fantastic job of saying, look, we need to fight. We need to fight harder. What we were doing 2 years ago isn't enough. And so we're very happy to see Matt Gaetz step up to the plate. You can see him there. He was aboard Air Force One with President Trump. But we're very happy to see him do that. Patrick, give us the Washington, D.C. take now that you're a Washington, D.C. insider.
That's I don't know if that's what I want to be known as, but I'll try to get that off of me over time here. But yeah, I mean, I was just reading through the press release from Congressman Gaetz' office. Looks like they introduced this National Stand Your Ground Act of 2021 on December 13th, and it's a great quote from the congressman. It says, like Kyle Rittenhouse, every American has the right to defend their life from an attacker. If someone tries to kill you, you should have the right to return fire and preserve your life. Let's reaffirm in law what exists in our Constitution and in the hearts of our fellow Americans. Abolish the legal duty of retreat everywhere. And before we got on here, I went back and rewatched the congressman's podcast, which is pretty exciting usually. Is called Firebrand. It's on Rumble. And he has about a 15 or 20 minute monologue, which is great. Very talented when it comes to this stuff. On Stand Your Ground, the right to self-defense. The congressman is on the Judiciary Committee. He seems to know this issue pretty well. And I was reminded as well from a rally that I was at. I think it was with him and Congresswoman Green. I can't remember where it was. But he had a pretty controversial quote, controversial in the eyes of the fake news media, right? But he strode up stage on the stage, and he said, We have a Second Amendment in this country, and I think we have an obligation to use it. Not about hunting. It's not about recreation. It's not about sports. The right of the people to keep and bear arms, the ability to maintain an armed rebellion against the government if that becomes necessary. How many congressmen in Washington, D.C. would actually say that? Not many. And so we're glad that he's introduced this bill, and we look forward to adding more co-sponsors to this legislation.
Well, I think when what you were saying there, Patrick, makes perfect sense. What Gaetz seems to understand that you cannot just sit here and be on defense the entire time. And that's really easy for a lot of Republicans right now. The moderates can sit there. They talk about being pro-gun as they fundraise off of gun owners. But what Gaetz has done is go way beyond that here with this bill. And he's putting them on the record, and he's leading that fight and saying, this is my stand. We cannot have the Mark McCloskeys of the country being prosecuted anymore. We can't have the Kyle Rittenhouses being prosecuted anymore. And we're going to go on offense with this fight. And besides just changing that narrative from defense to offense, he's now given us a chance as gun owners to see which other Republicans are going to stand up and fight for the Second Amendment. It's easy to, on defense, just sit there and talk about how you're pro-gun, but Gaetz is leading. And this bill, This bill is a really solid stand your ground law bill. And in a nutshell, for those who might not know what this means, what it's saying is that if you're not a criminal, and it stipulates you have to be a law-abiding citizen, and you're lawfully present where you are, there is no need to ever have to retreat before using lethal force if it's reasonable to stop a violent thug. It's a very simple concept. We should never have to retreat first. That's what the bill does. It says you can use lethal force if you need to without having to retreat. That's it. It's very simple. But he also goes on to cover the threatened use of force. And this is the Mark McCloskey angle, right? Mark McCloskey didn't have to use force, but he damn sure threatened to use force. He had his AR-15. It's the iconic photograph we've all seen. Wife has the handgun, and they were there, 2 people against 500 who were screaming about rape and murder and everything else. They threatened to use force. They didn't have to. That was the outcome he wanted. I know Mark McCloskey well. And he still got arrested. He still got arrested for threatening to use force. Under Matt Gaetz's bill, the actual or threatened use of force would be covered. It'd be an affirmative defense if you were prosecuted in federal court. This is the bill that we need in a post-Mark McCloskey, post-Kyle Rittenhouse era. And thank God he's filed this.
Well, let's talk about some of the Republicans that are supporting this bill then, because I see some of the comments in the comment section. People are saying, what are we going to do about this with Nancy Pelosi controlling the House? What's the point here? And so I think I know where you're going to go with this, Patrick. But can we also then get a list of the Republicans that are on it, but maybe more importantly, a list of the Republicans that aren't on it yet?
Yeah, and I think we talked about a little bit before we got on here, this legislation, it seems it's about charging up the base, right? We're trying to charge everybody up. Pelosi's not going to let this pass. But Nancy Pelosi has been passing gun control left and right through the House, H.R. 8 and all these other bills that they've tried to get through. The preconceived notion now is that the Republicans are taking back the House in 23, right? Okay, well, what type of Republican majority are we going to have?
Right.
Is it going to be listless? Are they going to go on offense like we want and like people like Gaetz and Congresswoman Green and some others are fighting for? Are they going to go on offense and take control of this country and roll back socialism and roll back gun control? Or are we just going to be limp-wristed, linguini-spined, and we just have to go through the same Paul Ryan 2.0 crap again? And we don't want to see that. But to your question, Chris, we got Congressman Gohmert. I think a lot of people know Louis Gohmert from Texas. He's always a good Second Amendment guy. He's a co-sponsor of this bill. Yeah. We've got Greg Steube from Florida. I know of a little bit. He hit a home run or two in the congressional baseball game. I remember that. But I think he's reliably conservative.
Hit a home run for gun owners.
Yeah, a home run for gun owners, right. Congresswoman Green, obviously, is always going to be right on Second Amendment issues, and I know that well. Paul Gosar from Arizona is very conservative, always right in the fight. Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma, he's on the bill. I mean, so congratulations to him there. On all the other issues, I don't know where he is.
Somebody said in the comment section, look at the weak, flaccid stance that Madison Cawthorn's taking on 2A rights. Is he on the bill from North Carolina?
I don't see him. I don't see Cawthorn on the bill, which
Yikes.
it's a good point. Randy
Should
Weber
be.
from Texas. But yeah, I mean, I can think of a couple dozen people that should be on this bill. Maybe their staffs don't know about it, but that's where, and I can name some of those people. You got Mary Miller, you've got Bob Good of Virginia, you got Lauren Boebert. Where's Boebert? Where's Boebert on this legislation? Congressman Madsen should be on this. Rosendale from Montana, Andy Biggs from Arizona, Jim Jordan should be on this legislation.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's going to be a part of our job at the American Firearms Association, is we're going to be working Capitol Hill in conjunction with our members and supporters, sending in the emails, making the calls, putting pressure on their member of Congress to get on this legislation, charge up the base, get ready for 2023, where a bill like this, with Gaetz being on the Judiciary Committee, I mean, let's have a hearing. The Democrats have hearings on all their legislation. I mean, and I think if we ask the congressman, I'm not going to speak for him because I don't know, but this was in response to Rittenhouse, right? Well, let's go. I mean, when the left has a big high profile issue, they go and they pass legislation. Let's go and pass this Stand Your Ground bill.
The time is always now. The time is always now to push this stuff. It's got nothing to do with whether or not Pelosi is in charge or Biden's in the White House. The whole point is to build a tidal wave. You've seen those, like the red wave memes you saw? You build up this momentum, this wave of grassroots pressure on politicians. And then when the time comes, we have the votes, we've browbeaten enough weak rhinos, we've tossed enough Democrats, then finally we get to bring that wave crashing down on top of them and make them pass something like a Stand Your Ground bill. If we wait all the way through 2022 because Nancy Pelosi's in charge and Biden's in the White House, and then maybe Republicans take the House back, and then at the beginning of 2023, more than a year from now, we start saying, hey, maybe we should have a Stand Your Ground law at the national level. Well, then we're starting from nothing. Then we're starting from a ripple.
Well, what we're going to get then is what we got for the first 2 years under President Trump. Paul Ryan had control, Mitch McConnell had control, and we had a Republican in the White House, not to forget, and we got nothing out of Congress. Paul Ryan did nothing. Mitch McConnell did nothing. And so the whole point here, for anybody who's wondering, what's the point right now? The point right now is to send a message to the Republicans in D.C. that we want you to fight for our gun rights. And if the time comes that you get the majority back in November, we expect action, tangible action on pro-gun bills. Let's be very blunt. Those guys, you guys in D.C., you got to pass, because the NRA was so busy padding their pockets that they gave you a pass in 2018. You did nothing because you weren't forced to do so. Those days are gone now. And organizations like the American Firearms Association are pushing and will continue to push. And we want to see action if gun owners put you back in a position of power. That is the purpose behind this bill. And that's why what Gaetz did here is just so smart. It's easy, again, to sit there on defense and say, I'm pro-gun, and ask for money. But to go the next level like he has here and file the bill, it puts people on the record. And that is what we need. And that's why this bill is so important. And that's why your congressman needs to co-sponsor this bill. So sign that petition and tell him or her to take action on this right away.
Yes. On top of putting them all on the record, it forces Democrats to start thinking about, how do we stop this pro-gun bill? How do we stop this pro-gun legislation? So instead of the Democrats all sitting there with a bunch of the rhinos going, okay, well, what gun control bill are we going to pass this week? They have to sit there and go, what pro-gun piece of legislation and what gun owners are we going to have to fight against this week? And it puts them on defense instead of on offense. And that would be a phenomenal place to put Biden's goons through 2022, because we know it's very likely that the Democrats are going to lose the House. They may lose the Senate as well. They may lose both chambers. So what are the Democrats going to do? We know this. We've seen this many times on many other issues, federally and at the state level. The Democrats are going to go all in with their rhino buddies to try to pass gun control in 2022 before they lose a chamber or both chambers. That's why we have to fight so hard on this now. Make the Democrats spend all of 2022 trying to stop us. That's so much better. And that's why we're so grateful that Congressman Gaetz introduced this bill, because many other people, I mean, I'm from Minnesota, a Michelle Fischbach would have never introduced a stand your ground bill like this. The Jim Hagedorn, they won't touch stand your ground legislation at the federal level when they should be the biggest advocates. So for Gaetz to introduce this is,
and correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but you live in Minnesota. Is that not also the place where they're the mostly peaceful protesters were stomping up and down Lake Street, just terrifying and destroying people's property right and left? Isn't like the place where they should be demanding stand your ground law?
Yeah, they mostly peacefully burnt down the 3rd Precinct police station and forced all the police to run underneath the Democrat mayor up here. Sure, they burned, and damaged 1,500 businesses up here while cops were told to stay away, and terrorized, incredibly so, the state of Minnesota and Minneapolis and portions of St. Paul. Yep. Same Minnesota, but these people won't touch this legislation. We need stand your ground law at the federal level. We need it now. Sign your petition, guys. We will deliver them for you. Congressman Gaetz will hear, hey, you are in total support of this legislation as well. And it puts the Kevin McCarthy's of the world on notice. You don't get to sit here and do nothing if you get the gavel back. If you're in charge, the NRA does not have the firepower to protect you when you try to sideline and derail our great pro-gun legislation. It's time for them to pass this stuff and time to get it done.
Yeah, and Ben, you brought up Kevin McCarthy, and I think the congressman would tell you that there is this incredible power struggle going on Capitol Hill. It's funny, you have people like Gaetz, you have people like Congresswoman Green, you have a few others. Massey is even in some of this sometimes. They're a small minority, okay? But they represent the base, right? They represent us for the most part. I mean, I don't know where they on every single issue, but for the most part, they're with us. And as we head into 2022 and 2023, there is going to be this incredible power struggle going for who is the loudest voice in this country on the right. We cannot let the Adam Kinzingers of the world, we can't let Red Flag Dan get a foothold even more than he already has. We have got to make sure that as we head through this year and into 2023, because the reality is that Republicans could go, if they take the House back, they might be at 250, 260, 270 seats, maybe smaller. If McCarthy's in there, we're going to have a war with McCarthy, guys. We are going to have to be the loudest, the most involved, the most fired up. And this is one thing that did happen, and I think all of us can attest to this. When President Trump came into office, a lot of gun owners, everything's good, man. We don't really have to do anything now, man. No, it can't be that way in 2023 because McCarthy comes from the Paul Ryan strain. He's been in Washington, D.C. since, I think, 1989 or so.
Good
okay,
gosh.
Not as a congressman, but as a staffer, and they will divert and they will revert back to doing nothing.
And doing nothing is not acceptable when the Democrats have been taking huge amounts of ground in the last year and a half. So for them to get in there and do nothing, we at least need to take back the ground lost. So it's just absolutely not acceptable.
Yeah, so anybody who lives has a Republican congressman watching this broadcast, this is the time for you to contact your legislator, your congressman, via the link we have in this video right here, and tell him we want to see action from you on our gun rights, on stand your ground law. Because again, it's just we're flipping the narrative here with this bill. We're going from offense on to defense. There's a lot of Republicans in D.C. right now that need to earn our respect as gun owners. We had a dozen of them vote with Pelosi to advance universal background checks, H.R. 8. We had over 100 of them voted with Pelosi on H.R. 4350, bills that would advance red flag gun seizure laws. It's time to see Republicans act like Republicans again. So when they get the gavel back, if that happens, like we said, we don't have a waste of time like we had for the first 2 years when Trump was in the White House. That was the biggest waste of time for gun owners in a long time. We all fought like hell to hold our gun rights under Obama. And we were all terrified. Oh my gosh, what if Hillary Clinton actually becomes the president? Gun owners defeated all of that agenda, defeated Hillary Clinton. We were on the precipice of passing major pro-gun bills then in 2017, 2018, and we got nothing. We got nothing. That cannot happen. We have got to get better Republicans who fight harder for us now.
Yes. I want to say something here real quick. I think this is very important. You know, since President Trump is out of office, since we got Biden in the White House, there have only been a handful of Republicans that have really been under fire from the radical left. One of them is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And one of the other ones, and probably the only other one, is Congressman Matt Gaetz. And so people in the comments here are just talking about some things that have popped up in the news and in the media about Congressman Gaetz. Here's the deal. The fact that a whole bunch of these other Congress people, like I was just talking about, like the Minnesota congressional delegate, the fact that you've never heard the name Michelle Fischbach, for example, in the news media is not exactly like points up for them. It doesn't mean they've done something great for gun owners or that they're astute Congress people up there fighting on behalf of gun owners. The reality is the media, the fake news media, only attacks people that they hate, are afraid of, or whose agenda damages or endangers their own. So watching Congressman Gaetz get attacked and attacked and attacked by every lefty psycho piece of crap under the sun for all of this time, in my opinion, when it comes to Second Amendment, it's points in favor. Points in favor. If you've never heard the name of your congressman in the media, if they have not been getting attacked by CNN or by MSDNC or the rest of these losers, then you probably got a loser congressman in many ways because they're keeping their head low. They're keeping quiet. I've talked with different congressmen up on Capitol Hill, and they say, what do you want me to do? And I said, the people want a roaring lion on behalf of the Second Amendment. They want somebody fighting for them. And you know what I heard from those congressmen that I talked to, the one in particular, he goes, look, I'm kind of new here and I don't want to say much. And I'm kind of a freshman here. They're just terrified. They're terrified. So the fact that somebody like Matt Gaetz can tread through that fire on whatever the issue is a fantastic thing. I think it's points favor for this stand your ground legislation. And we need to get, again, as we've been saying, more Republicans on board co-sponsoring this legislation. We listed the names ready. Louis Gohmert, Greg Steube, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, Mark Mullen, and Randy Weber. If your congressman is somebody other than those people listed, you need to especially sign this petition, call them, contact them, tell them to sign HR 6248. Get on Matt Gaetz' Stand Your Ground bill.
I just put a comment up in the comment section here, and I think Edward Albert is onto it very perfectly. He says we need to gut check every elected official that claims to be a Second Amendment supporter. The fact of the matter, and thanks for that comment, Edward, the fact of the matter is that if a Republican is not willing to jump on board just a rock solid, plain old common sense gun rights bill like this one, right in the wake of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, when the Democrats control the entire Congress, or if they can't do it now when it's the easiest of things to do, how can you trust them to be pro-gun when they have to push within their own caucus against their own leadership, perhaps? So this thing has a lot of benefits, not just right now, but also for the future. Tease up the whole battle that's going to happen if the Republicans take back the House in the 2022 elections and when they get sworn in 2023.
Right.
So
Well,
great comment.
Right there. Rod Katz says Congressman Gaetz might be too soon, but we can certainly win this battle, when we take back the House. That's everything we've been talking about at the beginning of this video. Now is the time to build the momentum for 2023. You don't start the fight when you have like the army in place. You start the fight way beforehand, and then you utilize it, you push it, and you get the stuff passed because you've built that tidal wave of pressure. Now is the perfect time. Could have been a year ago, but now is the perfect time to introduce this legislation so we can push it all the way through, hopefully, Nancy Pelosi's last year in power. And then again, yeah, push this stuff when Republicans take the House back in 2023 and pass stand your ground law.
Well, if they're not going to stand, now is the time to make them stand for stand your ground law because of the Rittenhouse case. I mean, there may have been a time when some people still thought that a lot of prosecutors are still pursuing justice. But when you see Mark McCloskey, when you see Kyle Rittenhouse be destroyed or try to be destroyed because they had the gumption to simply defend themselves, look, it's obvious we have got to have better protections in place for gun owners. We cannot simply trust the system to do the right thing anymore, especially since we all know that George Soros is spending millions of dollars in county level prosecutor races. Now, that's not the same thing as a federal prosecution, which this bill touches on. But the point is that we know for a fact that they're trying to use prosecutors to reshape this country and to demonize gun owners and put us in prison for the crime of using self-defense. And so for Republicans in D.C., this is the time. And as to your point, Ben, I think it was perfect. You know, this is the guy. Look, he's the guy in the trench. Matt Gaetz is the guy who filed the bill. Nobody else filed stand your ground law. And so, like you said, he's a guy being attacked because he's a guy who's making the biggest fight for freedom right now in D.C., and he's a guy who filed the bill. Now it's time that Republicans across the country co-sponsor and do it right away.
Frank says he has signed the petition. Julie says she signed. Jamie says she signed. Joe says he has signed. And Deanna just said that she signed as well. And Renee says a woman in her 80s was just attacked in St. Paul, Minnesota for her purse. It's not a gun problem. It's a criminal problem. And that's always been the case. And the reality is, without stand your ground law, even that little old lady, if she pulled a gun out and shot that guy who was trying to steal her purse and do who knows what else to her in the Walmart parking lot, she can get drug into court. She can go to prison because she did not try to escape. She didn't try to run away before she protected her life. How are 80-year-olds supposed to sprint away from attackers who are mugging you in a parking lot?
And it's clear now after Kyle Rittenhouse that common sense and straight up facts don't matter. Yep. If a political witch hunt is underway, if the Democrats have something that they want to prove, they will come after you. They will make you spend your life's fortune. And if you can't get lucky and get all over Fox News and everything and get all your legal expenses covered, you're going to get run through the grinder because they have no problem totally destroying your life if they can get away with it, if they can score points for their political agenda. So this is needed in all the states. It's definitely needed at the federal level. I mean, we see in all these appropriations bills that they want to increase the number of ATF agents and prosecutors and all these different things. They will weaponize the federal court system if they can't commandeer the state court system to come after gun owners. They will absolutely do that. So again, for those of you who joined here late, I'm gonna put his picture up here in the for everybody to see. But we're talking about Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz' introduction of a federal stand your ground bill, and we're kind of highlighting the people who have or have not co-sponsored this legislation. But it's a fantastic thing. It's been needed for a long time, and we're glad to see him jump in here and do this.
Yeah, and people are signing this petition by the boatload right now, guys. You got Rick, Gillau, Danielle, Daniel, Bill, Susan, and I can just go scroll down the list, and people are just signing like mad. Guys, we're heading into 2022. You have a decision to make with your gun rights dollars, and that's what we like to say, right? Join up with the American Firearms Association or renew. We have a lot of y'all on here who are, some of y'all are even life members on here, guys. It's a very easy website to remember. joinafa.org. joinafa.org. Become a member of the American Firearms Association today. There's big fights coming up in Washington, D.C., defensive battles on H.R. 8, which is national gun registration. We've got the VAWA legislation that we can touch on in other videos, guys. But get involved in the fight, okay? Get involved in the fight. Take that next step, sign your petition, chip in if you can, and then head over to joinafa.org and become a member today of the American Firearms Association.
Big year coming up, guys. Major fights in D.C., major fights in state capitals. AFA is going to be involved and leading the charge in all of those. This is all we have for you right now. Keep in touch. Watch your email from us for more updates and more videos. We'll keep you guys informed. Have a great new year and stay safe.
Thanks a lot.
See you guys.